Hello, my name is Annette, and I will be discussing the chapter questions for my Psychology 516 Organizational Psychology course. And starting with the first question on how historical events have affected the course of research in organizational psychology. There's a few events that stand out. Starting from the Hawthorne studies, actually came about where it was indicated that social factors influence impact on behavior in organizational settings. And for example, in 1953 also, there was a study done by Maurice Vitalet's book on motivation and morale in industry. And they basically studied job design and job enrichment studies. And they also were influential in creating job satisfaction surveys. They were the first ones to actually take a look at those from an employee's point of view. And in the late 1970s, early 80s, there were other studies by Solankic and Pfeiffer proposed in the study called Social Information Processing Theory as an alternative to more traditionally need-based theories of job satisfaction and job design. So in other words, there was a greater link to how employees relate to one another and as a result become greater satisfied with the work that they're doing. And so those studies were useful in helping setting up organizations' social environments as well as the jobs designed around connecting with other employees. And then also in 1985, a little bit more recent, there were studies and research done by Staw and Ross, and they'd studied the personality more in depth and the disposition's effect on job attitudes and perception. So these were studies done that started to engage in the work-life balance and investigating the effects of folks that are at work but had life pools such as child care or elder care issues, commute issues. And the studies also looked into the behavior and psychology of people that are actually aging out of the workforce in retirement. So those were all pretty pivotal, I'm sorry, in discussing where industrial organizational psychology is today and the research that is being done today. For my second question, we're going to look at questions from Chapter 3 in describing the socialization process for this graduate program that I'm currently in. So, according to Jackson Britt, the socialization process includes interaction, integration, and learning. And the socialization process for many graduate programs begin with classroom introduction and becoming familiarized with the course content and syllabus. And this course has been no exception. By doing this, it enabled me to become acclimated to the weekly process for turning in assignments, learning specific instructions on assignments, and additional resources to better learn and grasp the materials. I think one of the most important aspects of my introduction and socialization to this course is being introduced and learning the availability of my instructor. I think having that support and being able to know how to reach out to my instructor and ask questions has been huge in creating socializing me to the graduate program, and ultimately I'm hoping that that would lead to greater job embeddedness with me being able to go out in the real world and do an organizational psychologist's job through consulting or human resource or whatever the future may hold. So I do appreciate that so far this program has embraced some of the processes involved in socialization, starting with the normative contact. Of course, there's teaching and there's tons of research and, again, accessibility to the instructor. Um, of course, there's also some of the core elements, including knowledge acquisition, investment, and involvement. So again, being able to participate in discussions and speak with my instructor over time has really helped to acclimate me not only to the program, but of course to prepare me for going out into the real world to do this type of work. One of the one of the great things about the master's program and preparation for the organizational psychology field is there's tons of research in our course book, as well as um, even more recently being able to be encouraged to study out research and understanding how that research applies to the field, and understanding what I as a student can gain from that research and be able to um, inform my clients of. So of course, having so much research to overlook and interpret is giving me a great will give me a great advantage in the field, in that I'll be able to apply what I've learned in the graduate program to the real world. I also want to speak about questions for Chapter 4 on how an organization reduces or prevents work-family conflict. So I know in general, organizations that want to help their employees who struggle with the work-life conflict can do this in a few different ways. Um, so for example, an employee that may be struggling with childcare issues, whether it's getting a child ready and to childcare and then have to commute across town. You know, some employees are having to um, spend a lot of time in organizing that, and so an employer could actually um, be instrumental in producing that or reducing that conflict by setting up childcare at the site of employment. Of course, this would cause a reduction in stress and trying to find care or being late to work because of long commutes, again, to have to drop off children at preschool or daycare centers. So I think that would be helpful if more employers would embrace that as a means of providing support to their employees. There are a few other ways that I believe organizations can help their employees reduce that conflict of work and life balance. This has been a more recent thing, and frankly, I've seen this at a lot of larger organizations where they provide either exercise facilities or discounted gym memberships, or even in some cases free memberships for their employees as a way to obviously work on their physical health, which studies have shown reduce mental stress and promote well-being. So if an employer can either provide an employee with a workout room, or again those free gym memberships, this can be useful in providing support and reducing those work-life conflicts that can come about and cause stress in that employee's life, making them not as productive. Another popular way that employers can, sorry, my camera's getting a little shaky. Another popular way employers can make sure that their employees are supported is by helping them telecommute. I mean, um, this day and age, where primarily a lot of work is done on internet-based programs, or programs in Word, telecommuting is a popular new way in which employees can be allowed to save time commuting and being able to care for matters from the comfort of their own homes. Of course, all the while still being able to maintain the productions of production outputs for their department. But even giving an employee one day would reduce that work conflict. Um, I know some organizations that I've worked for also had flex time where, you're able to, we're able to work and get that production done, but still be able to take time off without any negative consequences to take care of business that needs to be taken care of during the day concerning children or elderly parents or even just personal times. I personally would love to see uh, mental health days come about, and hopefully that would be something that's not looked down upon in the future for all organizations. The that mental stress and um, conflict that can happen internally can really cause a great deal of strife and cause employees to not be their best while they're at work. Just to continue on with some of the questions that we have here in chapter 5, and there was a question regarding being asked to develop an assessment program for employee development and what techniques could be used to adequately evaluate employees' performance um, as comprehensively as possible. So, um, looking at a model of Murphy's model of job performance developed in 1994. Um, it's a performance guide that contains two or various dimensions. I apologize. Um, and two main areas such as in-role dimensions or extra role dimensions. And just talk a little bit about those dimensions. They're also further broken down into four smaller dimensions. So we'll talk about that in a moment. So this list can be applied to develop performance assessments for employees in their development. So of course, one of the first steps would be to identify specific tasks needing to be completed, and that's the in-role dimension. So really, an extensive breakdown of tasks, such as if you were looking to develop um, um, a performance assessment for an employee that's a secretary or an administrative assistant. So she would have specific things like filing and answering phones and um, creating letters, form letters, in some cases even communicating with vendors and providing job-specific tasks to what's needed on a daily basis for that. So that, of course, should be developed so that the employee will know essentially what is being asked for them, so that if they choose to move on from there, they'll know what's expected. Um, another area of development can be to help the employee develop interpersonal skills. So these fall under the extra role. So, there's certain skills like filing and answering phones that you can actually teach people, but these extra skills, these are skills that can be developed through training and coaching, such as interpersonal skills. Making sure that customers or even other coworkers are greeted positively, being helpful to other coworkers, and making sure that they make themselves available to participate in a teamwork environment. So again, helping an employee develop those skills will be able to enhance their growth in development. Um, some other areas that can be looked at under the Murphy's model would be, obviously to continue to work on those extra role behaviors. So we talked about interpersonal skills, but also, collaborative skills, the skills, the I kind of call it the emotional intelligence of a job, which is to, be attentive and to anticipate need, and also to have initiative on performing certain tasks, and enthusiasm for the job that you're doing. So those are very important parts of Murphy's model of job performance, and breaking down and forming an assessment, and therefore being able to manage or guide the employee through that assessment on things that they're doing well and versus opportunities of improvement. Okay. And moving on to some of the other chapters questions. For example, in chapter 6, we studied counterproductive behaviors. And this question will address what are some of the common organizational constraints and how they could lead to counterproductive behaviors. So I think initially it's thought that counterproductive behaviors solely lie, and the causes of it solely lie with the morality or the lack of ethical behavior in those employees, and sometimes that is the case. However, there are other organizational constraints that can occur that can either add to or inflame certain behaviors, negative behaviors in their employees. So, for example, um, when you have managers or supervisors that exhibit favoritism, or have very abusive leadership styles, kind of either my way or the highway uh, types of attitudes towards their employees. Oftentimes, the shift moves from being based on an actual employee's performance, but instead on how well the manager likes him or her. And it can become a leading cause of counterproductive behaviors. So in this way, um, some employees, this supervisor's behavior can create an overly stressful work environment and leaves employees with feelings of unfairness. So, depending on who you are, people manage or try to manage that unfairness in various ways. Certainly, at the low end, can become less enthusiastic and about the work, and certainly can really even decide to quit, and then you're dealing with high turnover under that supervision. Um, but also calling in sick a lot. Stress leads to high stress environments can lead to people feeling overwhelmed or depressed, and again, kind of going back to those mental health days, needing to just take a break. And again, if that stress factor is coming primarily from a inadequate supervision, or supervisor that exhibits favoritism, well then employees can start to steal time and take a lot of time off. Again, employees that experience an unfair work environment may take it upon themselves to create a leveling playing field. So in their eyes, they're just trying to feel as though they're getting something out of this jobs. So employees under this type of supervision can start to lack motivation and loyalty, as I previously mentioned. And this lack of motivation and loyalty can lead to other things like employee theft and workplace violence and everything in between. Just a general disrespect and a general apathy is the word I'm looking for. A general apathy of the workplace. So I strongly believe that organizations need to strongly train their leadership and really choose and raise up the right leaders, because these leaders must set an example and create a team where every employee is valued and respected. And this can reverse or prevent some of the negative effects of bad leadership. Leadership as role models should be taken very seriously in organizations because the ultimate results can manifest itself in various forms of counterproductive behaviors. And so just to kind of summarize some of the midterm assignments as of today, of course, in um, many historical events have enabled us, me as a eventual organizational psychologist, and the field as a whole has impacted us in the way that we're studying organizations and employee behavior now. We've kind of shifted, from a industry kind of top-down leadership, from really encouraging and growing loyalty and production from the ground up. So if you can tap into that human resource of the employees and enabling them to be able to find that intrinsic motivation or that internal motivation, it would really help an organization be able to run more smoothly and be able to, essentially not have as many counterproductive issues at work. Occasionally, you will have some, and those should be taken on a case-in-case basis. Um, just a quick little story. It's interesting. Um, at the healthcare company that I work for now, it's a pretty large group, and we help with some of the most what's considered the most vulnerable in our population here in the city of Dallas. And so there's a lot of protocols. There's a lot of um, policies, and those policies are pushed and encouraged all the time, which is great, and they need to be. But it's interesting, being a fairly new employee there, looking as I'm literally still being socialized to that um, organization. But it's interesting seeing the impact of the employees that I currently work alongside with that have been with these organizations. I mean, for years, some of them as long as 25 years. Um, Tend to kind of roll their eyes when it comes to certain policies and procedures. And as I continue to hear about other folks at different places, they're in the same position and how they're not treated in the same way as. So anyway, there's not a consistent leadership style or leadership expectation across um, this hospital community, and unfortunately, it's created a culture of cynicism and just kind of white knuckling it until I get to retirement, which leads to, again, people not doing their best. They're doing only the minimum necessary, which of course is required, but they're not creating work to their best potential because, in the opinions of some that I've spoken with, and quite a few, their efforts are never rewarded. And there's more details that I'll most likely be putting in some of my papers as the course goes along. Assessments are, although they're completed, they're very, they don't seem to accurately reflect the level of work that the employees believe that they're working at. And instead, a person that comes in to work with a negative attitude and no great service toward the patients or the other staff members, also exhibiting a workplace aggression, is graded at the same level as someone that does just the opposite. Is very enthusiastic, very polite, very motivated, goes above and beyond, is always there to help when asked, and they're asked a lot because they're always say yes. So it has created a little bit of it seems to be again cynicism. So that sums up my summary for midterms, and I appreciate the time, and hopefully I haven't said too many ums or too many uhs. I'm not used to speaking in front of a crowd or a camera, so hopefully I've hit all the points, and I appreciate your time and listening. Thank you. Goodbye.